Yeah, wait, we're missing one. Are we missing one person?
Behind.
Okay. Madam, I'm going to put you on this side of me, just so I don't have to yell. And I don't want my back to you, because that's rude. All right, gang. A few quick things. Remember that there are cutouts here, okay? So on that second tier, you see there's like a guard cutout. So don't let that fool you, right? And in the bottom here, you have Andy Dufresne. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Mm-hmm.
Don't let that fool you either, okay?
Too late.
Because it can happen. It's happened to us. You just have to, take a second look. A few quick things, and then we're going to let you get around this whole area here. You have this entire level here, this first floor. Are they allowed to go up one, or are they just staying?
No, just stay down here, but you can go down here to like the showers.
Okay, and you can go down to the showers. Now, luckily this place is huge, so for 20 people to have this much area,
All the way around.
all the way, or you can go right the other side too, right? Yeah, so you have the same size, but on the other side as well. And you can go around to the showers as well, and then these two sides. So that's pretty awesome. Because honestly, if we were going to do an investigation or something, I wouldn't call 25 people. Say, hey, let's go do this. So a lot of people have some concerns. They say, well, what are the chances that we're going to experience something, or with 20 people, that sort of thing? And you definitely can. It does happen. At these events it happens, and there's not. You have to think a lot of times, most of the time, when things happen, it's not people going to look for it. It's a tour group of 50 people going through. It's 15 people over here. It's that sort of thing. So you can have some experiences. And the way I look at it is, if they didn't like people when they were alive, they probably won't when they're dead. So if they didn't like 20 people around them, and they didn't want to interact with 20 people, they might not now. But if they didn't mind, they probably won't mind now. That's if you believe the theory that they of intelligent haunts, where they do maintain conscious thought and decision-making skills, that sort of thing. But there's no guarantee, so that's that. So the possibility is here, and I'll give you a couple quick tips just to get you in a better position to have those experiences. And also, if we're dealing with a residual haunting, which 70% of the time it is a residual haunting, not aware of time and space, it's not going to know if there's 100 people here, or 5 people, or 1 person. It has no idea. It's just doing. It's just doing what it does, and has no idea what's going on around it. So real quick, equipment, because a lot of people come to these, they have equipment, and I see that it is widely misused, and it's really our fault, if we come to an event and don't give you proper training, that sort of thing. But even if you watch the TV shows, that sort of thing, most likely and most of the time the devices are not being used properly. So who has, let's start quickly. Anybody have a laser grid? Laser? Anybody with lasers? You have one? Okay, and I saw one other person. Just quickly, if you have it, I'll take a look. Well, don't worry, I don't need to see it. But I'll tell you quickly, and this will be for everybody, because she'll use it, and you can see it, and you've seen on our show and other shows where you have the laser grid and the beams go out this thing, right? May I hold it? Okay. So you see how this is a valuable tool, right? Like this. And you can set it up all nice like that, right? Now what's interesting is something that moves in front of it is going to brighten those, intensify those beams, right? So just quickly, the most boring thing in the world is what a laser is. People don't quite, laser, it stands for something. It is a light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. That's what laser means. So basically it's using radiation to propel these beams as far through the atmosphere as they'll go. Green and purple are the two colors that will travel the farthest distance. Furthest or farthest? Furthest. Furthest, thank you. The furthest distance. So a lot of times, why this is good to be explained is you'll see investigators, and you're reading books, and you'll see where they say, oh, the beams just darkened out, and some of these, you know, the laser points darkened, and this and that, and it looks like a black mass moved in front of it. That's impossible. Science tells us, scientists that I've talked to, and science and research that we've done, is that the only way to remove radiated light is with a wormhole or a black hole. And clearly that's not here, or else we'd all be sucked into it and vaporized, or whatever would happen, I'm not sure. But clearly there's no wormhole or black hole, you know, in front of us. So those beams cannot darken. If they do, it's going to be something right up close, like that. See that? Or it's going to be your diode inside, or your power source. Okay? If it's something paranormal, it's going to intensify. See how when I move it in front of that lady, how the beams get brighter? That's what it's going to look like. It's going to intensify. It's not going to darken. Okay? Now, if you see it darkening out like that, you'll know that that's behind the source, not the source. Okay? So it'll always intensify. And you're not always looking for something paranormal. Well, I mean, you are, but you're not always looking for that sort of disruption. For instance, real quick, we had it set up on a bookshelf at the Willard Library, one of the most haunted libraries in all of the country, and we saw just a few little of those lights twinkle. We said, that's weird. Why would that happen? And then I thought, if a book moves forward, the beam's going to intensify. So we went back and watched the footage, and sure enough, right where those beams twinkled, you saw a book slide forward. And that is at the Willard Library. So quickly, so that covers, the very quick version of a laser grid. The beams and the lights will intensify and not darken. Okay. Anybody with EMF gauges? EMF? Electromagnetic or K2s?
K2.
Okay. Well, let's see here. The K2. K2 is not a bad device. I would suggest eventually getting an EMF meter. The only problem with the K2 is it's not properly shielded. And you don't have your in-between, right? You know at 1.5, 2.5, but you want to know before 1.5, right? Because if my base reading in here is a 1.1, then getting a 1.5 means nothing. Even getting a 2.5 might mean nothing. So you need to know your base reading, which this doesn't give you. So eventually you want to, but this works nice if you just set it still and leave it, okay? Now the thing with the EMF, there's a lot of things that, well, there's one very important thing, and I could have 30 investigators in this room, seasoned investigators, and I could ask each one of them what EMF does, and I'm going to get 30 different answers. And just a very quick base, boring as you can imagine, but you need to know it. EMF really doesn't read anything in the magnetic field, it just reads radiation. And what's important about knowing that is that radiation rarely, if ever, dissipates. There's pockets of radiation that scientists think go back as long as the Big Bang, if that's a true theory, right? So radiation might never dissipate. So when you get a reading on your EMF gauge, and you'll see, I watch, I'll come across TV shows or come across whatever, and I'll talk to investigators, and I'll investigate with people who have written books, and they'll, every reading they get, go, oh gosh, this is a 2.0, but you don't know if that reading is a year old, if it's 2 years old, if it's 5 years old. How do you know it's in real time, right? So you need, once you get a reading, you don't know if that's in real time or if it has already happened. So the first thing you do, you get your spike, what we call a spike, right? And you need to make sure that it's not coming from a source. So you'll move your gauge in every direction to make sure it dissipates in every direction. That tells you that it's not coming from a source, right? So if I started going this way and it's rising. If I go this way and it's rising, I'll know I'm going towards the source, right? If it's dissipating, I'll know I'll go away from the source. So once you have it established that it's a free-floating source, it's not coming from anything, like a light socket or an electrical outlet or some conduit still running water, copper pipes. There's a lot of things that can give you false readings. So once you've established that it's there and it's in the middle and it's not coming from a source, you then need to start heightening your investigation, asking more questions, trying to figure out if you can get other things to happen to figure out if it's a reading in real time or if it's something that has already happened, okay? So that was sort of a long, boring spiel, but something you definitely need to know. And a lot of investigators don't know that the EMF gauge reads radiation. It has nothing to do with the magnetic field. What happens is when energy moves past energy, it burns a little radiation into the atmosphere, and that's what your gauge is picking up. Okay? So there's, as I said, no way to tell if that happened years ago or if it's happening now, or so you need to keep that in mind. Okay? EMF cameras, self-explanatory. You don't have to say flash or any of that stuff. If you want to, that's fine. Unless there's somebody, is there anybody medically sensitive to that sort of thing? Honestly, is there anybody that? Okay. So with the cameras, it's usually more annoying to hear everybody going flash, flash, flash. Just know that you're going to deal with some spots in your eyes. It's going to happen. It'll go away. Now, dealing with a dark environment like this, especially with distance, right? Everybody, if you close your eyes real tight and open them, you'll see splotches and that sort of thing. Those are called phosphenes, right? Those are different splotches and colors. Those can happen when you look into darkness, okay? So if you start to see a shadow or something move or something that looks like a globule, you're going to want to stare at it for quite some time and make sure that it's not your eyes just doing that. They're called phosphenes. Very strange, but it happens. And we've all been fooled with that sort of thing. So you don't want to fool yourself. Real quick, audio. Anybody who has audio, you're going to want to tag what you hear, okay? If you hear a loud scream coming from another cell block, which you probably will hear a lot of stuff, don't let it aggravate you, because expect it. Know it's going to happen, and that sort of thing. But you're going to want to tag it. You're going to want to say, I just heard a cell door slam, or I just heard this, or I walked in and I heard this happen. That way, when you're listening to your audio later, you won't misinterpret something as possible evidence, right? You don't want to fool yourself. And just a very quick, for instance, how that is useful. We're investigating a place called the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, and Tango and I were investigating this hallway where they claim to have seen and heard a nurse or a hospital worker pushing a cart down a hallway, and I'm listening back to the audio, and all of a sudden I start hearing all this squealing, metal squealing sound, and I can hear it bouncing around, and I'm like, wow, this is a sound in the room. This is it. We got the sound of this cart being pushed down the hall, and I was about to call Jason and call everybody, tell them we got some awesome evidence, and then I heard Tango say, I just moved my chair and stood up, and it made a loud metal screech. Now, I didn't remember, even though it was just 2 days before. And he probably wouldn't have remembered that, but he tagged it. So we didn't fool ourselves, and more importantly, we didn't put it on the show or put it out as evidence and fool other people. So tagging is quite important. Now, at these events, Tango and myself were very fortunate, and some of the other investigators, where the paranormal is our life. It's what we do every single day, and it has been that way for quite some time. So at these events, this is for you guys. So you're going to get to go and wander around and do whatever you want here. And what I do, and what Tango does in the other events here, is we'll be walking around and jumping in on EVP sessions, or looking at your pictures, taking pictures ourselves, and that sort of thing. I would suggest that you introduce yourself and let it be known that you're here, just to study and collect data. You don't want anything to do, but you want to build a rapport. So when you say you turn that corner and you go down that hallway for the first time, or you go into a cell for the first time, because you can go in all these cells. You say, hi, my name is Steve, and I'm here just to. It may not know what you're saying, but just in case, you want to be respectful and that sort of thing. So we always do that. I'm trying to think if there's any other pointers you might need. Your spiels at the other groups will be, as the night goes, they get shorter and shorter, because the first group, everybody gives the long spiel, and then they condense as the night goes. So that covers it. Yeah. From here, folks, you can get lost in this place. Both sides. Oh wait.
How long are we here for?
An hour. well, maybe 45 minutes now. But quickly, I forgot to tell you, 700 deaths in this cell block on both sides. They're claiming to see masses and shadows move around. We had a thermal camera when we were here set down at the end there, and it got we're not sure exactly, but did get a bit of a thermal hit. And the staff had told me recently they were hearing a lot of whistling, which is, I don't know if, unfortunately, unless I see it or hear it with my own ears or eyes, I sort of have to take it with a grain of salt and say, okay, but how do we know that whistling didn't come from outside? Or how do we know, and you're going to want to listen and make sure that the voices match the voices in here. The reverberation is the same and all of that stuff, okay? So from here, folks, get in there, and I'll be walking around, talking with people, and
You know,
yeah, of course.
you probably have a lot of experience with flashlights.
Yeah.
I just put new batteries in there. You know why they keep shutting off?